Thank you, John, and thank you, Parish Catalyst, so much for the chance to talk with you today. I've just been so impressed with the work that you're doing, and to all of you church leaders that are here, thank you, first of all, for the work that you do for the Lord and for the people that you serve. I'm just really impressed with you and the organizations you come from. I got to do a little bit of background on some of you, and I'm very inspired by all of you. So thanks for the time today. John asked me to talk a little bit about what it means to take a plan like you've been working on. And I know I've brought teams to events like this where you come up with these great strategic plans and then you get back home and kind of run into a wall when it comes to implementing the changes you've been thinking about and that you know are right for your parish or your congregation. And so John asked me to talk a little bit about some of the things I've learned as a church leader and working with leadership teams on how to implement change well. My first real experience with change management and leadership really comes from my dad, who was a military commander. So if you can imagine what that was like, he was a pilot in the Navy, and my dad ruled with big authority. He did it in his command and he did it at home. And so when I had my very first leadership role as a young leader, I just thought that's what you did. I had the position, I had the title, I was going to come in and make things happen. And it really didn't work that way, mostly because it was in my school and I was still in high school and learning how to navigate the fact that people don't have to do what I say. And so rather than leadership really being top down and being forced on people, what I had to realize is that the best leadership, the most effective leadership, really happens through influence and happens as we kind of connect with those people who are on the same page with us and work in influencing a group of people really from the inside out. And so my mind shifted from sort of this top-down pyramid to more of concentric circular rings, where I thought about who are the people that already know what I'm talking about, kind of that inner coalition, as you might call it, and how do I build, influence, and lead people to see the vision that we're trying to accomplish, to understand the steps that it's going to take there, and really, rather than leading ideas, leading actual people. And I found that very helpful, especially as I worked in nonprofit world, especially as I work in the church, where people are there really on their own volition, and they come as volunteers to help us achieve the mission, or they come because they're looking for something from their church, or they've always been a part of our community of faith, but their ability to jump in and be a part of something kind of wholeheartedly, which is what we're looking for, especially when we're talking about building dynamic disciples, really is voluntary. And so we have to get to really to the inner core of what drives people and really help them understand the vision in a different way than just because we said so. So what I like to do is think about change when it affects people, really almost like a trapeze artist. If you think of a trapeze, like at the circus, people on a trapeze, so they've got a bar and they're swinging back and forth. And what we as leaders are asking them to do is say, hey, we know you're comfortable hanging onto this bar, going back and forth, but over there is a better bar. There is more things out there. It's better for you. It's better for the people we serve. It will help our lives. And so what I'm asking you to do as your leaders, I want you to let go of this bar, fly through the air, holding on to nothing for a little bit, grab the next one at the right time, and enjoy life on the other side. And so it's no wonder people are scared to do it and very often resistant to do it. And so that trapeze picture, I try to remind myself and remind the teams I work with that that's really what it feels like when you're not in charge of change. I always say that I like change as long as I'm in control of what it is and I get to decide how it's implemented. But most of us don't like change when it's given to us, either from other people or just life happens and things change our life. That's when it's difficult. And so remembering that the people that you're asking to jump on with a new vision or live life differently or live out their faith in a new way, we're asking them to leave the safety of the bar they know, hurtle through air in the unknown space, and grab a new bar that they only know because we've told them about it. So here are 7 different ideas, and they could probably put in this order if you wanted to, but if you've managed change before, you know that it's not always a direct linear route. There's kind of some roundabouts. Sometimes you're doing 2 or 3 steps at the same time, but here are 7 sort of steps or ideas to keep in mind and even talk about as a team as you bring home your plans and start implementing the change for really creating some amazing dynamic disciples and shifting the culture of your parish. So the first one is what I call paint and frame the vision. Paint and frame the vision. You all have been working on the vision. You know what you're wanting to accomplish. You have some goals and some kind of a preferred future that you're looking for. So I don't want to talk about that, but how you communicate that is really a little bit more of art than science. A couple of years ago, my family and I got to go visit in New York City the Modern Museum of Art, and I was amazed at all the beautiful pictures. But the thing that surprised me was not just these beautiful paintings, all the colors and the layers and what they depicted and the emotions that they communicated, but also these gorgeous handmade frames that were around all of them. And you could tell the really expensive artwork or the real premier pieces because they had a lot of white space around them, like a lot of wall space, and the frames were huge and they were extremely ornate. They were works of art in and of themselves. So when you're casting vision, there's 2 parts that you want to do. First of all, you want to paint the picture of what you're wanting people to move towards. And sometimes, especially when we're leading communities of faith and people who need to be influenced more than commanded what to do, those pictures sort of are a process. So you might have sort of the background drawing, you might have some of the basic colors that you want, but you're going to take those home and talk with people. You're going to connect with leaders. You're going to continue to brainstorm as a leadership team. And so over the next several months or maybe even a couple years, that picture is going to come to life more and more as more people have input, as new colors are added, as the vision and the clarity really begins to emerge as you're part painting, part experiencing what this new reality is going to be. So painting the picture is the first part. But then this ornate frame around the outside is what really sets it apart from all the vision casting happening in your parishioners' lives. They're getting marketed to, they're getting invited to be a part of things, they have a lot of hopes and dreams that God has planted in their own hearts. And so this frame around the outside is the why behind this vision. And I won't go into details on this, but connecting beyond the what and the how, what the vision is, how you're going to accomplish it, reaching further into the why is this important? Why does this matter? Why is this the make or break of where our church or community of faith is going? Why is this important to you personally? Why is this important to your kids and your future grandkids? Connecting to that part is a huge piece of really setting your vision apart as something different. And I want to recommend a TED Talk to you by Simon Sinek called Begin with Why. He's also written a book about it. It actually might be called Start with Why. It's a wonderful TED Talk. It's an excellent book. And if you're going to go home and start casting the vision and really beginning to paint the picture for people, be sure to take a look at that content, because the what and the how as leaders are the easy things for us to get connected to, because we think in terms of what and how, but the why and making sure we have that as the first issue and the most consistent and the most clarified will get you furthest with the people that you are influencing. The second step then is to provide some anchors for people. If you think back to this trapeze idea that people are sort of letting go of one thing and kind of are in the unknown and haven't quite grabbed hold of the new thing yet, an anchor is something that they can hold on to in the in-between time. So these would be things that are not changing. Sometimes as a leader, I've made the mistake of talking about how everything's going to change and it's going to be so much better and you're going to love it and we're going to love it and it's going to be amazing. And I forget that there's actually a lot of things staying the same. And for people who are at all resistant to change, those things that stay the same are the anchors that kind of hold them on. Scripture even talks about anchor is like our hope. It's the things that we hold on to that we hope are going to still be there on the other side. And so holding on to these anchors allow us to really give people the consistency that they're looking for. So some anchors would be things like, we've always been a parish that's been about reaching out to our local community. That's not changing. In fact, this new strategy is all about doing that in a better, more effective way. It could be the anchor of, we all know each other. This isn't going to change what we share as a community. Our leaders aren't going to change. The way we do weekend services or Sunday morning and Mass isn't going to change. The way we care for the poor and the outcast isn't going to change. The values that we have, the things that we believe, what are the things that are going to stay the same? And in vision casting and in talking with people one-on-one, as you're trying to help them see where things are headed and the positives that are to come, it's really important to also take time to really think through what is it that they're going to be afraid of losing, and what things are they actually not going to lose in the process, and giving them those anchors. So the first step, paint and frame the vision. The second, provide anchors. And then the third step is to look for what I call fat babies. This is a concept that I was introduced in the book Switch by the Heath brothers. It's another great book on change management and communicating change to people. And they tell this story about a guy who was commissioned by the government to go to Vietnam and work on malnutrition with really infants in Vietnam. Now, it's a very poor country. There's a lot of problems in the country. And so he was given a certain amount of money. It wasn't a lot, but it was a good chunk of money. And I think 6 months to be able to go and take care of this problem, or at least move it forward a little bit. And so he got on a plane, he moved his family, he was very excited, and he started meeting with all the people in the government that are in charge of nutrition and children and family services, and all he got in these meetings were everything that was wrong with the system. Well, to be able to really take on malnutrition, we have to have better roads so we can get things to people, or we got to really take on the water supply system because the water isn't good, and you can't even cook food if you don't have good water, and all of these things that started to really kind of just kind of stack up as roadblocks. Like, man, I don't think I can do anything in 6 months with this money and really make a difference. So instead of going with all of those folks and kind of hitting the walls that all the big politicians and the bureaucracies and kind of global organizations were hitting, he decided to just go local. And so he got a team together and went around and just visited different villages and thought, I'm just going to go see what people are struggling with and see if we can make any movement, even in just 1 or 2 villages. At least we could do something for the 6 months that I'm here. So he started visiting villages and met with moms and tried to see what exactly was wrong with the kids, what were the things that they were missing. And by the time he got to maybe village number 3 or 4, he started to actually meet a few babies that were healthy. In fact, they were not just healthy, they were kind of chunky. And so I call them fat babies. They were chunky and healthy and had rolls, and he's thinking, this is not at all what I expected to see in this place that I've been commissioned to go help. And so what he started to do was ask moms, who around here has babies who are chubby, who are fat? And so they started finding out, and he went and observed what was going on with those moms. And they started showing them that they were doing a lot of things differently. And so he couldn't go visit all the villages in all of Vietnam, but he started asking moms, do you want to learn what makes a baby healthy? So he put together a team of moms that went out and started finding babies that were healthy, and they started tracking down everything that happened in the baby's life and then comparing it to what they were doing in their village and the traditions that had been handed down to them about how to raise a baby. And they started finding things like in most villages where there was malnutrition, they would just let the babies kind of crawl on the floor and put a bowl of rice or food out for them and expect the baby to go over and eat when it was hungry, because they thought the baby would eat whenever it was hungry. But the villages with fat babies, the mom every couple hours would bring over a bowl and sort of shove some food in their mouth, or every time they walked by the baby, they'd put a mouthful of rice in them. And so the babies were eating all throughout the day. So they wrote that thing down. The moms of fat babies were chopping up leftover grains and greens and things that were left over from the farmlands, which had actually soy and protein in them. And so they put it in the bowl and mixed it up with the rice. And that was giving the baby a lot more nutrition than the other babies. And so everybody was like, okay, chop up the things and put it in. So what he started to do is find even just simple 4 or 5 things that were already happening, where there were fat babies already happening. And those were the people who started sharing their stories. And all of a sudden there were fat babies there were babies chunking up all over the area in villages because of just 4 or 5 simple techniques that were different that the moms of fat babies were doing. And so in the book, they actually call them bright spots, but I just think it's more fun to call them fat babies. So the third step is to really look among your parish and among your people and look for fat babies who are already doing the things of being a dynamic disciple. It might be you. It might be people on your team. It might be the random businessman who is really good at explaining his faith to people. It might be the mom who has a few kids that are really good at reaching their neighbors outside, or working at a homeless kitchen, that are reaching out among themselves and serving the poor with their extra time and resources. Those people are likely in your parish. And so if you can find those folks and let them start telling their story, or celebrate their story for them, or use them to explain to other people, we want to see more of this. This is what Jesus is looking for from us as people of faith. And look how we're already doing it. It's not hard. It's just a few simple steps. We're already doing it. We just want to do more of that. And we as leaders want to help you do more of these attributes that really define what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. So looking for fat babies and then telling their stories and letting them share their stories in their own words can be a really effective way to help really build that coalition and help transfer that knowledge of the behaviors that you're wanting people to kind of catch the vision of. One of my great ministry mentors used to say, you get what you celebrate. And so if you can start celebrating the fat babies in your congregation, it will be amazing how other people will be inspired by their testimonies and really begin replicating what they're doing. And then step 4 is invite with action steps. So as you talk with people, either one-on-one or as you move through those rings to bigger and bigger parts of your parish or membership, you're going to get to the place where you probably can't have one-on-one kind of conversations and invitations with every person. So you might have big vision meetings or information meetings. You might send something out in your newsletter. You might meet with your whole membership at your next membership meeting. But regardless of if you're one-on-one or you're meeting with everyone, when you cast the vision, you have to make an invitation to be a part of the action. And so you want to give people an action step. So this can be as simple as signing up for an email that gives you updates on how the progress is going, or the wins that are happening along the way, or what you've reached in terms of milestones so far in implementation. It could be as big as jumping in and being a leader. It might be participating in a 3-week class to learn more about what it means to be a disciple. Any of those things, you just want to make sure you give people a chance to move this from just in their minds, just theoretical, to really into action. Something that moves from their head to their hands and their feet so that they're a part of it. I like to think of people in kind of 3 categories. There's usually, when you talk to someone about a new idea, there's early adopters who are just like up for things. They're like, I love flying through the air, through, between 2 trapeze bars. I live in the freedom of no constraints. They're going to be quick to jump in. They're going to want to do it. Doesn't even matter how compelling you are at casting the vision. They're all in. I love those people. Then there are people that are a little bit more cautious. They like the right kind of change, but they want to calculate the risk. These people, which are the majority of folks, are really primed to take an action step. It's kind of like a way to dip their toe in the water. So signing up for a class, signing up for a short-term commitment. Maybe it's they try a discipleship class for 6 weeks, or they try meeting with a spiritual mentor or being a spiritual mentor for 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 12 weeks. For those middle people, those cautious folks, it's really important to give them a begin date and an end date, so that if they partway through are like, I do not want to give up my trapeze bar, I'm not interested in going to the new place, they feel like they've got a chance to back out, or they know there's a finish line. They're not signed up forever. Most of the time that doesn't happen, because once people taste what you're giving them, they're going to love it, but they want to know that they can go in without being all in from the very first step. And then there are those that are just resistant, and we'll get to those in step number 7. But you want to give everybody at least one little step, or at least even the folks that are really resistant, an easy win. Sign up for a newsletter, read the announcements every week and the program that you hand out. Do something that's somewhat passive, where they still can take a step, they can still feel like they're a part of things, the world isn't moving on without them, but you're not going to try and convince them to do something that's going to really change their life, because they're probably going to be on the later side of jumping on the bandwagon. So that's inviting people with an action step. The fifth one is what I call painting the walls. And I'm a little addicted to home and garden television, as maybe some of you are. But one of the things I love is when there are big changes for very low investment and very low time. And this is what I think of when I think of paint the walls. So whenever you want to redo a room and really change the look and feel, you can leave the furniture the same, you can leave the people the same, you can leave the function of the room the same, but if you buy a can of paint and spend one day painting it, the whole place can feel really different. And so when you're implementing change, especially in the early stages, you really want to find those things that are easy wins. What is the equivalent of just painting the walls on the room? What is the low-hanging fruit? What are the things that make it move forward, make your vision move forward, but that are really easy to do, they're quick to implement, they're easy to celebrate, your congregation can see movement happening really quick. I remember one time a few years ago, I was actually put in charge of sort of revamping one of the departments at our church, and it was a great challenge. I was excited about it, I was passionate about the topic, and one of the things we did to really kind of show visual movement to all the work we were doing behind the scenes, because it was a big change. There was a lot of organizational structure. It was taking a lot of time. Is we just redid the whole office space. I rearranged all the offices. We actually did go in and paint the walls. We got rid of these giant, huge filing cabinets that seemed like you worked in a bank. Everything was brown and beige and just seemed like old and slow and kind of just took forever. It kind of felt bureaucratic, took forever to make a decision. We wanted to get rid of all of that. So we painted things bright. We put a lot of green, a lot of plants, because our theme was we wanted to grow and move forward. And so just the visual of everyone being in a new office, when other people from other departments came in, they had to look for where people were. It had this fresh new feel, this fresh new vision. We put our tagline up on the wall. So even though nothing had actually changed in terms of the ministry we were offering yet, it was still 2 or 3 months away, it felt like a brand new place. When we came to work, it felt like we were doing something new. When people stopped by or came for a meeting, they knew things were moving forward, even though it was literally just painting the walls. So I encourage you as a team, are there some easy wins that you can do that have big statements? Can you change the wording on something that's prominent to your parishioners? Maybe it's in the lobby, maybe it's on your website, maybe it's on your program that you hand out to people. Is there a way to really celebrate something or start a newsletter that could show up in people's inbox every couple weeks or every week and tell stories about what's happening? And they're like, man, things are really moving along, even though those things have probably been happening, but to them it feels new and fresh and like it's a brand new place. So that would be a way to get some movement forward. The sixth step then is what I call pouring the cement. Now my husband is a wonderful handyman. I can only remember calling a repairman once or twice in our 20 years of marriage. And one time he had to fix the sidewalk out in the front of our house. And so he had to get all the cement and like mix it up and re-pour it. It was such an interesting process because I'm not very handy and I don't know a lot about those kinds of things. But the amount of time it takes to cure cement was very interesting to me, because he would put it in, he had to build a frame around it, pour the cement in. It was very liquidy, very mushy. He could move it around all over. I was really excited because I wanted to put our hands in it, but you couldn't do it for quite a while because it wasn't set enough. And then after a while, when it was just about, like it almost looked like you could walk on it, but it wasn't actually formed yet, you could put your hands in it and write our names in it, and then we still had to let it cure before we could ever walk on it or ride a bike on it or anything like that. So pouring the cement is where all of a sudden your plans are starting to solidify. When you first begin to implement change, things need to be pliable. You're building some frameworks of the vision, you're pouring things in, you're moving things around. You don't really know what's going to work and what's not going to work, or at least how it is exactly. And so you want to leave things pliable. Now, I have a confession to make. I love to plan. I'm a strategist by wiring. I want to administrate and organize and come up with a process. So even if I only have 100 people I'm leading, I'm thinking and I'm scaling. What's the system we can build for 1,000 people? How can we? And what I found is that skill set in implementing change really has to be put into neutral till the very last stages, because I can get in there and harden the cement way before it's time. And so if that tends to be you, if you are a strategist, if you like formulas, if you want to really make things concrete before it's time, you're going to miss the ability to move and form your systems and your structures to really be in line with where the vision and where God is really taking you with this vision in regards to the people. So the last step then is pouring the cement, where you pour it, you mold it, you see where people are happening, you see what discipleship movements are taking off, you see what structures they're asking for, rather than telling them you're going to be missional and go outside the walls of the church and do these sorts of things, and this is the sign-up sheet, and this is how you get there, and this is where we're assigning you. Instead of doing all that, encouraging people to explore being missional and then see where those things take off. And then they'll come to you and they'll ask, hey, can we put something on the website to get more people to join us? Could we have some sort of way for people to sign up with this? Is there a way that we can put this in some sort of database so we can track with people long term on how they're doing and what their experience was and giving us feedback? Do you see how it's rearranged? Do you see, rather than making things concrete, the plans, the structures, the systems, making them concrete too early, your people, because they've been taking action steps because of your invitation, are going to start asking for the structure that they need for the place that you're at. So pouring the cement and adding structure and systems, you have to add them, but you have to add them later in the implementation. You don't lead with them, you add them later when the fruit of the movement is requesting it and needing it in order to be able to take steps forward. So I have one last step, but these first steps are all about change. Painting and framing the vision, providing anchors, looking for fat babies, inviting with action steps, painting the walls, pouring cement. They're all about change. They're all about implementing change, casting vision, getting people on board, building a coalition, creating a movement with your people so that things move forward. But the last step, number 7, is all about growth. When those things have been implemented and things are taking off, step number 7 is what I call pruning for growth. Now, this also is a last step and doesn't have to be taken too early because, as I said before, there are different kinds of people. You have early adopters, you have those cautiously open people, and then you have those resistant people. And the thing that allows for group number 2 and 3 to really jump on board is the ability for them to have time to process the change, time to think through it, time to even grieve what they're losing. I know that can sound kind of silly when it's so exciting what's going to happen with the new vision, but people love what they've had. In fact, many of them have been really ministered and taken huge steps of faith because of the systems and the environments that you've created for them up until this point. And so giving people enough time to really process that through that, understand the anchors they can hold on to, ask questions about what this new trapeze bar is going to be, and build trust to really let go of what was and grab onto what will be. It takes a lot of time. But after a certain amount of time, and that time frame changes for how big the change is and how big your congregation is and how resistant or open to change they are. So there's no real rhythm for it. But usually I found in most organizational changes, it takes usually a few months for people to really get their mind around something. And my mom always talks about the rhythm that God gave us in the rhythm of 12 months of a calendar year, to go through the seasons, to become familiar with things, to live through this new idea through Christmas, through Easter, through all of the different traditions you have in your community of faith, being able to really get their minds around it before we move to step 7, which is where we have to make the tough calls of saying, I know that you don't like this change. I know that you wish we could go back to the old trapeze bar, but this is where we're going. And so sometimes there are things that we need to prune in order to really be able to move forward. And there might be some things that are easy to prune. It might be easy to shut down that program, or to rearrange the staffing and let go of these people, or to ask these people on the board, their time is up anyway, they're going to step out of leadership. There are easy prunes that you can do that are almost like painting the walls or low-hanging fruit. I'm not talking about holding back on those. I'm talking about people who are really resistant to the change and may even turn to being actually aggressive against the change. At some point, those things have to be pruned back. So programs that are sucking resources and time and leadership oxygen away from your new vision of discipleship might need to be scaled back or even cut off completely. staff people or people in leadership roles that are really resistant and might even be sowing dissension against the vision that you as leaders have decided is the direction that we're going, those people might need to have a very strong conversation and really be given the opportunity to either jump on or to do something else or find another place to worship. I know that can sound harsh and difficult, but I've just seen so many churches and teams and leadership groups not be able to really move forward, not in implementation, but really be able to move forward in growth and multiplication if they aren't willing to have the hard conversations. And the words are great, pruning for growth, because that's exactly what pruning does. You have to cut off some things in order to be able to redirect nutrients and resources to be able to bloom in greater areas. Two great resources when you get to the pruning for growth stage is one book is called Managing Transitions by William Bridges. It's actually good about the whole transitional process, especially when it comes to people. So if you're finding resistance or you're wanting some ideas about how to help people kind of through the more emotional or psychological sides of managing transition, that is a really great resource that I've gone to a lot of times. The second is my favorite, which really I recommend for every leader. It's called Necessary Endings by Henry Cloud. So if you, especially as a team, find that you have some things that you're going to need to prune, either programs, resources, even maybe some people, some leaders or staff, I really recommend going through that book. It really guides you through when is it time to make a change and when is there still hope for things to be different. And I found that very helpful because when you work through the process, many times you find out this is not something or someone that you should cut off. This is actually something that still has hope, still can be turned around. But then when you finally work through the process and you're like, no, this really has to go, the work of getting there makes you very confident and sure of your decision, and really gives you a lot more energy to implement it. So those two resources. So once again, just to go through the 7 things: paint and frame the vision. Number 2, provide anchors. Number 3, look for fat babies. Number 4, invite action steps. Number 5, paint the walls. Number 6, pour the cement, systems and structures. And then finally, number 7, pruning for growth, to be able to really see your vision multiply and hopefully, Lord willing, become a movement in your parish and also in the parishes you're connected to. So thank you so much for your time this morning. I hope this has been helpful. I think I'm going to be able to join you live here for a little Q&A, so I'll look forward to chatting with you in person. Thank you again, John and Parish Catalyst. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I will chat with you guys in a minute.